All right, hello and good morning.
Hello. There we go.
That one.
Excellent.
Oh no, it's the wrong screen.
Oh no.
Why
Oh,
is it
no.
this screen? It should not be this screen.
It should not be this screen.
Well, it was that screen. Maybe. Oh, I bet Allie changed it over.
We have technical issues, which are easy to fix. Enjoy mirror mode for the moment. Just right click on the desktop thing there.
Here?
No,
Here?
that one, yep. And then change that to desktop too.
We might just put everything on the left screen.
We can do that also.
Alright, well, let's move this away. And move this over. And get rid of you. Music too loud, anybody? Good music stuff. Alright, so Richard.
Yes.
Good morning.
Hi.
It's very early.
It is. I am the opposite of a morning person, so
Yeah.
this is a challenge for me. But hello to our friends who are morning people, and to our friends across the pond. Ponds, plural, because I guess we have people in Australia now as well.
Yep.
As well.
Or just across the pond, across the street or something.
Yeah. Well, hello everyone. So for those of you that don't know me, my name on Discourse is Brakar. I am the lead designer on Stonehearth, and I'm joined by Malley, who you probably do know because he's an awesome dude.
I stream, I don't know, like 4 times now or something. But yeah. Lieutenant Campbell, you can submit stuff on
Stonehearth.net.
You can probably type that.
Yeah, that'd be good. Let me move my coffee so you don't destroy our streaming machine.
Stonehearth.net. I believe that's correct. I may have spelled it incorrectly. Let me click on it. That's wrong.
That is. Yeah, that's an S there, not a C.
That's an S. Oh, that's better.
Yeah.
That one. And yeah, people post there. So for today's stream, unless you have any ideas, I was thinking we could look at the wolf and see how bad the rig is, and for future work that I want to do on it. But that might be very short experimentation because I think I can't use the legs as they are.
Yeah. Well, so I thought maybe we could actually open up. Music is apparently too loud, by the way. I thought we could open up with just talking to the community a bit and getting some questions and feedback or anything they might have about what's going on in the project, and also maybe take a moment to review the new roadmap that we put out and why we're thinking about things in that manner.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, let's pull up the roadmap just so we have something on the page.
You want to drive?
Yeah.
Sure to give.
All right. So. Recent development roadmap. Excellent. Okay. So. How can I make this a little smaller?
Right click, open tab.
Open image in new tab. Excellent. Okay. So, for those of you that have been following development for a while, we, for a long time, have had a public-facing roadmap on our main webpage. And that roadmap has not been updated too much in the last 6 to 9 months-ish.
I think a year.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of questions about what is it that we're actually doing, why does the certain things say that they're like 70% complete, it's been 9 months, why isn't it 100% complete now? And so what we did is we went through a process of rethinking about the project as a whole and how we want to try and communicate to you guys with where we're at any given point. One of the challenges of game development is it's kind of like art. It's never really done. You just choose to stop. And so having a roadmap that like lists things in percentages isn't really helpful, right? Because if we want to do a bunch more work in classes that we didn't think about earlier, or one of you guys came up with a cool suggestion for a new class, like that doesn't fit into this imaginary like final 10% bucket or whatever it is. So what we did is we went back and tried to rethink about how we're expressing things and think about things more in the context of what are our current goals that we want to achieve. So instead of a feature list, we're talking about things like we want to have construction be intuitive and rewarding. We want all of the activities in the game to enhance and celebrate progression. And we want people to engage with Hearthlings as individuals, more like kind of broader mission statements than explicit tactics of we're going to do this very discrete thing, and then once we've done this, we check it off and we move on. And part of that's because a big value we get from the development process is actually communicating with you guys, getting your suggestions, getting your feedback, and getting impressions from you that frankly have an entirely different perspective than we have as developers. And so if we go in with a pure feature list and just saying, oh, we're going to have this list and check things off as we go down, we're missing out on that opportunity to engage with you guys at a deeper level. One of the other things you may notice with this roadmap, if you compare it to the previous one, is we've actually expanded the map a bit. And part of that is because we are in the process of kind of thinking very deeply about what Stonehearth is, what Stonehearth could be, and what the community building genre actually represents, what makes it fun, what makes it unique, and why hasn't a game in this space really broken through to a larger audience. So that's actually a lot of what I've been doing for the past 4 or so months. I've basically been writing what amounts to a thesis dissertation about the genre, what makes it cool and what makes it doesn't. And I'll actually be presenting that to the team today, or at least a little bit of that. But a product of that is that our view on the game as a whole is expanding. And there's probably more uncharted land out there that we could explore and pioneer, and that's why this image now is kind of like surrounded by clouds on the outside, because who knows, as we continue to develop and what we continue to focus on, what like cool lands we may end up finding. If you want to get info, more detailed info on this, I'd encourage you to look at the roadmap Desktop Tuesday that Stephanie posted. Now. Oh, did she post another one? Excellent.
Yeah, if you go back, there's part 1. Go back again. There it is, part 2. So there's 2.
Oh, look at that! All right, I didn't see that this had gone up. Excellent. But these will provide a lot more information about how we're thinking about things, and probably express it a bit more elegantly than I'm doing so right now. So I definitely encourage you to check out these 2 Desktop Tuesdays. I think that they will provide a lot more clarity in how we're thinking about the project as a whole and how we want to move forward. And yes, Aaron Dyers, this is our quarterly stream in the morning out here in the West. We know we have a lot of fans in the UK, hello to Germany, and otherwise, and always doing streams in the evening means we can't really communicate with a decently sized segment of our audience. So yeah, every quarter we do a stream like this. The next one is currently scheduled for 8:30 a.m. on August the 9th. But this is really an opportunity for us to chat with you guys and get your guys' thoughts on things. So let's see, I am gonna move this up a little bit so I can see more of the chat.
It's on the right.
Excellent. Okay. And as far as Mokun for coding streams, it all really depends on who's doing the stream themselves. If we have an engineer who's actively working on feature development, then they'd be here doing a coding stream more than likely. I could be doing a coding stream if I was doing active scripting at the moment, and Ali was actually just suggesting a moment ago that we maybe do some animation because that is his wheelhouse. But yeah,
also, we do a rotation of people. So Chris is on the rotation and he does coding streams, and then Justin just got onto the thing. Did he do one? Mm-hmm. No, Allie did it. Allie covered down.
I know Justin was supposed to do one.
Yeah, Justin I think will do one. He's like jumped onto the end, so like at some point he will be there, and then he'll be part of the rotation just like everyone else.
So yeah, and before we jump into like random stuff, again, if you guys have anything particularly you want to talk about, suggestions, questions about the game, like please post those into chat, because communicating with you guys is the main purpose of this particular stream. Otherwise, we will just start to ramble about how great like Prey is and how much I'm enjoying it.
I haven't played it.
It's super good, dude. It is a really good game. I loved System Shock 2, and Prey is basically System Shock 3 for all intents and purposes, as I'm thinking about it.
I love System Shock 2
yeah,
as well.
I actually started playing System Shock 1 like again, and it weirdly holds up.
Actually, I'm not sure which one I played. That was the one where you like go to another planet, and then there's like weird little alien creatures that like you help create the AI build, and then she tries to like take over the world.
You are on a spaceship in System Shock 2.
Right.
And it has been overtaken by the Mini, and
right.
which are these like organic biomass things that have little worms and people, and you control them, and then you fight against them, and then find out what really is going on and where they came from. System Shock 1 is the one where it's not WASD to move, it is ASDX to move.
Yeah, I didn't play 1.
Yeah.
And in 2, there's a boss with like really crazy, creepy eyes and like electronic stuff coming off her face, and she's part of the wall, right?
All right. Well, enough enough maybe about System Shock. Wanted to give people some time to put. Yeah. Do you want to talk about scale? That's something we've actively been discussing recently.
Sure. Hyrule scale and animations. It is in the game. If you want to write it yourself, it is there. It's honestly not that complicated to get scale into the game. Now, there is a huge complication with scale in rigs, which I didn't realize at first. As I said, it's in the game. The problem is, if I'm a Hearthling, where's my picture?
Whoa.
Back here. This is going to be like a 10-second delay. I think you can see most of my body.
Well, here,
like,
I can fix that. Boop. There you go.
Okay, yeah. So, if you scale me from my feet, like the whole rig.
Please scale Malley from his feet.
It doesn't work. Like, my feet are one thing, my butt is another, my chest is another, my head is a separate object, as are all of my body parts. So what you do is you have to incorporate something called scale in the hierarchy. So, like the pelvis is actually the base of the rig. So you scale the pelvis, which tells its child, the torso, to scale a certain amount, which tells the head, the child of the torso, to scale a certain amount, which the shoulder is a child of the torso, the forearm is a child of the shoulder, or something else. So all of these scales have to talk together, basically, and the problem is that's a complicated system. And honestly, it's not that bad, but here's the problem. When you scale that stuff, if all you're doing is scale, great, you're done. The problem is when you add rotation. So if I put my arm, instead of my arm being in base pose, I put my arm up here, my arm is technically 180 degrees opposite of where it was. And like, honestly, that's fine too. It's when you get into weird stuff like 90 degrees or like 45 degrees, it's when it has weird rotations. Basically, you must do, I believe it is translation, rotation, and then scale at the end. You can't do scale over everything because it just freaks out. So actually, I believe my next task after conversation animations is going to be going back and actually adding scale to the rigs. I'm sorry that still won't help you, Hyrule, because A, because it's in Maya, and B, because I haven't gotten permission to send it out yet. But I will check back in about sending it out, and hopefully we can get it out to you guys. So I think we might have missed some questions.
Yeah, so there's some questions about an adventure mode of some kind. So, for those of you that have played Dwarf Fortress, this is how I'm interpreting that question. Adventure mode is an alternative mode of Dwarf Fortress where you can actually play Dwarf Fortress as a roguelike. And frequently this is used as a way to control a single dwarf who's going back through old fortresses that have fallen, and so now your fortresses that were once full of dwarves are now full of all sorts of demons who want to eat your eyeballs. And you fight them off and find all the cool stuff that you previously had done. It's a really neat way of getting additional content out of the world that you've been building, and also creates this kind of cool scenario where you view the world with an entirely different lens. So now, like that hallway that was surrounded by like 200 rooms top and bottom and was super organized and neat while you were there, now just becomes this hallway of despair as you worry that any of those 200 rooms may be full of demons that want to not so lovingly caress you. So it's that particular type of direct control of a Hearthling is probably not something that I expect us to do inside of Stonehearth. One is a bit aside from our core mission of creating like of allowing the player to build a community that they engage with and have the city and its citizens tell a story of warmth and heroism. That said, I am interested in exploring ways that we can create more of a feel of adventure inside of Stonehearth as a whole. So, as a alternative implementation, something that I am kicking around in my head is the idea of sending out expeditions to go on to adventures. And you could think of that system something more akin to, let's say a much better version of the system that was in Final Fantasy Tactics, where you see a map and you've got some story, and you hear rumors that there's this cave elsewhere, so you decide that you're going to send like a group of 3 people to go explore it. Those 3 people leave your town for 2 days, and then come back afterwards telling you how things progressed, what they found. Maybe they found a cool sword, maybe one of them broke their ankle, or maybe something else entirely. It's actually a place that I'm really interested in exploring in terms of maybe incorporating interactive fiction. Interactive fiction is for those of you that have played FTL or have played, I think like Stellaris does some of this. I think, I forget the other game that I'm thinking of, but there are sequences in the game where you're presented with a little blurb of story, and then you have dialogue options from that to choose how to navigate that experience. Sunless Sea, if you've played that, is pretty much all interactive fiction. You can create kind of a cool moment where, like, you, for example, in the case I gave, there's like this cave that you send 3 people off to explore. You get this, as you know, after a day passes, you get a little prompt saying something like, as a group ventured further into the cave, they heard whispers coming from around the corner, and the flicker of a faint firelight washed across the walls. And then below that, there's like 3 options. The first option is like press forward and challenge those whoever may be around the corner. The second option might be like this cave is dark and full of secrets. Let's avoid this for now and not tempt fate. And maybe the third option, which is an option that you could only get if you had a cleric in your party of the 3 that you sent off, could be something like you hear and understand the chants of cultists around the corner. It is with your righteous fury, it is time to disperse these evildoers, or something like that. And each of those 3 options would like provide a different outcome to that exploration. Maybe have different impacts. Maybe the you know, whether you guys are hurt, whether the cultists flee and you don't find much in their camp, or maybe you're able to catch them in surprise and ward off their spells, and so you get a larger set of loot from that particular exploration. That is something that I think could be a really cool way of getting that adventuring feel, but without making an entirely separate game, which is what I feel that Dwarf Fortress's adventuring mode basically is.
But the thing you're talking about us possibly doing is future, many years off,
yep.
Yes?
Well, I will not ascribe a timeline to it, but it is something that I am interested in pursuing, for sure.
Okay.
But as with anything, there's priorities. It is not currently prioritized work. So let's see. I pontificated for a while, so there's probably some questions up here. What's going on for our next few alphas?
You're asking the wrong person.
Fair enough. Well, so currently we are working on a conversation system for the game, so that your Hearthlings actually have a concept of what's going on inside of the town, what they recently interacted with, and can start spreading ideas inside of the town as a whole. So, like, someone interacts with a goblin and feel free.
I can try and show some animations. Keep talking.
Yeah, so someone interacts with a goblin and is like, I really hate goblins. And so then they walk up to another Hearthling and is like, I really hate goblins. And they're like, oh, I didn't know about goblins. I guess I really hate them too. And then that idea of goblins kind of spreads through the town, but also as people talk to each other, their sentiment on what a particular subject will be compared against each other. And so if two people agree on how they feel about something, either they're both really happy about something or they're really angry about something, those Hearthlings will feel better as a result of that conversation. And in turn, if the two Hearthlings are disagree on something, so someone's like, I really hate goblins, and the other person's like, no, goblins are awesome, then they'll kind of be frustrated with each other because they can't believe each other has that opinion. So this will be an attempt to kind of create more flavor and a better system around the little thought bubbles that you see inside the game right now. And part of the reason we're focusing on that at the moment is because this deeper system for communication between Hearthlings, and the idea of passing ideas around, is important groundwork for us to lay before we can get to broader concepts like a social system. So people making friends with each other, people having rivals, people, if we go this way, dating, getting married, having family members inside the town, all those types of things. But for that system to survive, people need to interact with each other and need to be able to develop opinions about one another. So that's what the conversation system is going to unlock for us, even if we're not at this next alpha shipping with those bigger social systems. We're just trying to lay the groundwork for it. You got some stuff?
Maya's not working. You can give it a second. I'm hitting the open button and it's locking.
Okay. About 50% of the time I hear animators say Maya is not working.
Yeah. The other 50% of the time they say Max or some other program isn't working.
So beyond the conversation system, the things that we're talking about as a team is we are discussing the idea of creating more gameplay around crafting as a whole, and that comes kind of in two forms. One is a kind of actually holistic review of the crafting system and what things lead into what, how people get recipes, what it means to level up your crafter, and kind of turn the crank on that entire system. So once we do that, how crafting works may look fairly different. But in addition to that, we want to create more reasons to have any of the particular things that you craft. So one of the other things that we'll be exploring probably around the same time is the creating a concept of actually improving your workshop and having support items for your workbenches. If you guys watched a stream that I did a couple of months ago, where I actually did the design for that on the live stream, that is an example of the type of work that might be going there. Beyond that, there is additional work going on from the design side on trying to prototype out some broader context for what the mid and end game of the game should be, to get a more solid framework for why you're playing Stonehearth and what makes playing like 4 hours in different than the first 20 minutes that you play. And Malley and others are also in the process of doing some exploration on visual changes to the game, to try and get a little bit closer to our aspirational target of some of our concept pieces and other things. That's an ongoing exploration. What comes out of that, it's a little early for us to know for sure, but if you've been watching some of Allie's art streams, I believe she's actually been talking about that stuff as well.
Yeah, she's shown some stuff, and we've got some really cool stuff out of that.
Yeah.
It looks like Maya is not going to work.
Okay. Try killing
one
it.
more time.
Okay, yeah, so you kill it. Water. So when do we expect water improvements to be sprinkled in the upcoming alphas? So Albert is actively working on water right now to try and improve a lot of the core tech behind it. Once that tech is online, he and I have a meeting to actually talk about how we can add more gameplay related to water into the game as a whole. That is being slowed down a little bit by the fact that frankly there's a lot of different design stuff that we're talking about at the same time. So we're actually just finished interviewing an additional designer to bring onto the team, and his presence might be one of those things that directly unlocks more water-based gameplay. Hopefully he comes on soon. And he checked his email, so I don't think this would be a surprise if he's watching the stream. But yeah, he's also not a morning person, so it should be fine.
I'm sorry, Maya looks like it is busted. I'm trying to just leave it open and see if it will eventually recover, but like I'm telling it to open a file. As you guys saw, I could open a recent file, but I can't open a file of my choice, which is really odd. I've never even heard of this. It's possible that it's like opening on another window or something, as if it was...
Well, there's... what's the output window there?
It's just the normal output window that Maya always has.
Okay.
Yeah, I think...
That is super weird, dude.
Super weird.
I have not seen that either.
We could keep talking and maybe it'll come back, so
All
I
right.
don't know.
Let's see.
The water improvements?
Yeah, I actually just spoke about water improvements.
Okay, cool, sorry.
That was
I was
fine.
in the zone.
Interacting with goblins, Lieutenant Campbell. So I actually agree completely with that. I think we need to do a revisit on our encounter system so that things are less explicitly scripted and things are more dynamically generated and responsive to what the players are going on. That particular work is probably blocked a little bit by the prototypes that I'm doing right now, because what the structure of the world is and what the point of what you're actively doing from moment to moment would directly feed into what types of encounters we have, how you would be interacting with those goblins or whatever other forces are out there. So once I get through my prototypes, which is probably going to be my focus of the next 2 months or so, that should be able to unlock some much deeper conversations about encounters as a whole and what we want that to look like. Tracking game world history. This is from Tayloon. So how could we see what Hearthlings accomplished in their life, and get some historical information on it? So we have a little bit of that right now in the form of the journaling system, but
he's talking about for chieftain though, like for a goblin chieftain.
Yeah, but it's more like the way I'm interpreting the question is like, how do I look at a Hearthling and understand what the story of the Hearthling is, and how has that story changed as a result of the things that are happening in the world as a whole?
Okay.
So the journaling system does that a little bit, but the journaling system is pretty surface level at the moment. If I remember how it's implemented, that was implemented before I joined the team, but I think there's like a collection of about 30 different paragraphs that could be in the journaling system that are then divided on based on some separate characteristics of a Hearthling, what they may or may not have. But I do think that there's a lot of value in creating more historical information about what a Hearthling is, who they are, and so that way as players we can start ascribing motivations to these Hearthlings and start recognizing patterns and then generating stories from that. So the first step there, I think, is to create more contexts with which we track a particular Hearthling and understand what they're doing inside of the world. So the conversation system is kind of an example of that. The idea that Hearthlings have certain subjects that they recently interacted with and have opinions on. The happiness system with its thoughts are an example of that. So they did something and that particular thing made them happy or sad. The social system that I alluded to, whenever we get to that, will be an example of that. Like, how do I feel about other Hearthlings in my town? And then as we turn the crank on the encounter system, like what does it mean how do Hearthlings feel when the Goblin army invades, or when the cultists rise up, or whatever that ends up being. Once all of those hooks are in place, then I think we can start looking at creating a more player-facing visualization of that information and start weaving it together. Like, I loved, this is one of my favorite features of Dwarf Fortress, and I don't know if we'll ever be able to hit at the level of detail that Dwarf Fortress has, but as an example for those of you that haven't played the game, one of my favorite stories is I was doing a campaign in one of the earlier versions of Dwarf Fortress, and there was a husband and a wife. And the husband was a miner, he just mined away doing all this awesome stuff, and his wife was an artist and would be the one that was engraving, like carving statues and engraving things on the wall. So my dwarf one day ended up digging too deep and accidentally opened a hole in the wall to a vein of lava, and so the lava ran through and he basically immediately died. As a result of that, the female dwarf whom he was married to went mildly insane and started just carving these frescoes on the wall. And these were, because of the way that works inside of Dwarf Fortress, when someone goes insane and does something like this, the output is always like of artifact quality. It's like super, super good. And these frescoes she was drawing, she was engraving on the wall, were frescoes of her husband who had burned alive in lava. And the thing is that she gained so much skill from this that other dwarfs inside of the town who were carving things would started carving frescoes of a woman carving frescoes about her husband burning alive in fire.
That's amazing.
So that's a level of depth that I don't think we'll ever be able to get to inside of Stonehearth, but the idea that like this event happened in the world and now there's a resonance throughout the game as people remember it and respond to it, I think is really compelling, and is something that I want us to get to, but we need to build more of the base systems inside of the game so there can be meaning behind those concepts.
Do you want to talk about Hyrule's own to bed gameplay versus like owning a house?
Oh, okay, let me read this.
I can answer Lou Moore's, will the animal tamer give us pet wolves to fight? If we keep going with the animal tamer, which I think we will, then yes, it will have pet wolves. We have pet wolves, but pretty much any animal we're probably going to turn into a pet as well. But wait and see what we actually come up with.
Yeah, there's some scoping things because as soon as we create and make an animal a pet, there's a whole like set of animations that we need to build for that creature, like sleeping, eating, nuzzling, all those types of things. So,
as well as fighting, idols,
yeah.
Go to sleep, get up from sleep, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of animation.
So, yeah, in an ideal world, I would want every animal to be able to be a pet. But unfortunately, since we are a 3D game, we can't hand wave as much around the stuff as some of the 2D games in the space that exist do. It's not as simple as just turning on a flag. There's actually a lot of content that comes along with it. I will tell you, Malley, that and I've not mentioned this to you, I would love someday for pets, certain types of pets, to be able to haul stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would love that too. And I have no problem with that as long as we are okay with not showing the pet holding a piece of whatever.
You don't want
that's the problem.
Don't want like a little wolf like walking along on his hind legs, like holding out.
No.
No?
And to be fair, like a lot of the animations that we want to have, the reason that the 2D games you're referencing can get away without doing it is because they make the choice not to. Mm. So like we could do that with our 3D assets. There's no reason we can't. It's just we're losing that level of fidelity, and we're not showing it happen. And there's like a general feeling on the team that when something happens, we should show it. So that's where the pushback comes from. It's not necessarily that we have to do it.
So, Hyrule, I'm trying to, related to your bed question, I'm trying to read through what you wrote and understand what the core of the problem is. Because as I'm reading what you wrote, I can interpret it in kind of two ways, and maybe you can help provide some clarity to me. Is your concern more that there isn't enough stuff related to the idea of a Hearthling owning a home, so that the idea of a Hearthling owning an explicit bed feels kind of like isolated in relation to the fact that they ignore everything else inside of their house? Or is your argument more that you don't as much like the idea of Hearthlings having like specific things or areas that are their own? I'll wait for your reply, and then once you answer that, I can try and address the house questions. So let's see. Don't Call Me Shirley was asking about opinion possibility on carts and or wagons. So let's see. I guess the question would be, why would we have carts or wagons? And
Did you just say we have it?
No, why? Why would we have carts and wagons? Okay. And so, because I've not thought about this at the moment, but the reasons to have carts and wagons would likely relate to the need to transport things, goods and things, over long distances. Inside of a town, based on the scale that the game currently exists at, I don't strongly think that there's a big need for carts to move goods around inside of a town.
I can tell you my use case for one is less moving stuff. It is moving stuff, but it's more like here's my town. Mm-hmm. See my hand? Here's my town, and there's my town. Mm-hmm. Over here is an outpost.
Yep.
And the problem right now is if like here's gold in the wall. I know it's there. I want it. So I tell my people to go out, and by the time they get there, they get hungry, and they turn around and they come back. Mm-hmm. So the idea for a wagon would be like, you take a wagon that has food and sleeping and all that stuff on it, and then the Hearthlings go out there, they mine the gold, they go back to the wagon, and they don't come back here. Like that's one idea.
Okay. So I think the question of wagons and stuff then comes back to how much do we want the structure of the game as a whole to encourage building those outposts versus encourage the player to build more cozy, centralized towns. That is something that will hopefully be borne out a bit more by my prototyping, because the idea of how we deal with territory expansion is like a core idea that I'm trying to pursue. I am inclined inside of a world to rely more on expanding the gameplay and diversity of roads, so that you could build like higher and higher quality roads that increase the movement of people on it, as opposed to creating an entire system like carts and wagons for that sort of stuff. But that's only inside of the world. If we were to amp up our quality of interaction with things that are beyond the map as a whole, like if trading was something that you could actively do, like you could load up a cart and then go off on an expedition and trade with some external city. If traders, when they came into your town, actually like came in driving a cart and then like drove the cart up to your trading post, unloaded their goods, and then that's when the trading action happened. That sounds more immediately appealing to me, and something that I can more directly see as a, like, oh yeah, like almost in any circumstance, the idea of carts would improve that style of gameplay. So both options may exist. I would say that the carts, comparing the two, carts for use strictly inside of your town are less likely to happen unless something changes about the game as a whole, where we now really want to encourage outposts. If that happened, then it'd be super high priority. Whereas the carts that are dealing with the space outside of your town, that is more likely to happen, but also lower priority, if that makes sense. So I even wrote like a basic design for that, I think back in November or so. It's just sitting in the backlog because there's so many other things that we want to get to first.
Hyrule answered your question. If we scroll up.
Okay.
And then
yeah.
surrender, he says.
Yeah, so it's so basically beds ownership feels kind of bad right now because bed ownership is the only real concept associated with Hearthling owning a home. Yeah, no, I agree with that. We should. I think there is a reasonably strong argument to be made that we should beef up that concept so that Hearthlings have a better concept related to what their room looks like, what the value of their home is, what the decorations inside of their home are. Yeah, I completely agree with that. We're not there as much yet, but
I think that actually adds a lot of complexity. Without, unless you think it through, it doesn't really sound like it. But if you think it through, imagine I have a house and Richard has a house, and we prioritize our house over everything else. Then we would never see each other again. Like, so to limit the, like, we want to build community, right? Mm-hmm. So if you make it so everyone goes to their home to eat and sleep and everything else, and they have their own food stores and they never go outside, like, it's kind of the real world. But you need to have like, hey, let's go to someone's house and eat dinner together. Mm-hmm. Or hey, let's go to the community place and eat dinner there. So it's like, when do you do this? Whose house do we go to? What if someone's antisocial and they don't want people coming over, but sometimes they do anyway? Like, it becomes drastically more complicated. So we have to be careful just throwing that stuff in.
Yeah, I will admit I am less inclined to doing things in creating a stronger house concept that in turn strongly affects how Hearthlings act inside of a town. But I do think there's room for a middle ground there of, in general, creating a stronger concept for this is my home, and so it reflects back into happiness or some sort of personal evaluation or other things. And then there are certain very specific items that a Hearthling wants to have in their home, and maybe even a even smaller subset of those that provide unique actions. So as an example, a bookcase. If there is a bookcase in your home and you want to read a book, which is an action we don't currently have in the game, as long as there isn't a like a community library, you go to your home and you read that book. Sure. And you wouldn't just arbitrarily walk into someone else's home and start reading a book from their bookshelf because it's not your bookshelf.
Yeah, the Surrenders are saying like having personal chests where they claim materials, tools, and other stuff that they personally equip. I agree that possibly could be micromanaging, but in that exact example, like you could have a library and then a bookshelf at home, and then the Hearthling could go to the library and read a book and have a chance to be like, I like this book, and I'm going to take it home and put it on my personal library. And then you would like, over time, you would look at their personal library, and it would be like, how to cook with Bob Joe, and like just all these books, and you're like you would be able to like read a story out of the idea that this AI was like randomly pulling these things. I think that's fascinating. I really like the idea of like an evolving world that you can like manipulate, which is why I love this game. So.
Yeah, it's the balance is always about finding that in-between point in the complexity of the simulation, so that it's complex enough so like emergent things can happen out of it, but not so complex that there's a whole bunch of things underneath the hood happening that players can't see. A tangible example of why that can be problematic from an entirely different game is one of my favorite games is Alien Isolation, and the engineers on Alien Isolation spent an immense amount of time like creating a very detailed simulation for how the AI of the alien in that game works. If you haven't played Alien Isolation, I'd strongly recommend it. The art direction in that game is amazing, as is the narrative direction. But specifically talking about the AI, they did all this work to create a really complex simulation, and then when reviews came out for the game, a lot of people simply thought that since they didn't understand the things that the alien was considering, thought that the alien's behavior was purely random, or explicitly scripted for certain scenarios. When in fact it was like this really complex thing, but without the visibility, they weren't getting the value from it, and in fact, the complexity was getting in the way of people's understanding of what's going on. Compare that to. So there was a game that came out in 2005 called Fear.
I played that.
Which when it came out, people said had some of the best AI for soldiers that they had ever seen. Like they thought it was like a groundbreaking like improvement in AI compared to what was going on in like Half-Life 2 and other contemporary first-person shooters in the game. And they were like, oh man, the AI like search a room, they always find me, they flank me, and all this cool stuff. And you know what the AI did?
What?
It followed the left wall.
Yeah.
That's all it did. And it was a combination of smart room design and smart encounter design to create that feeling being flanked. But that core system was just like, yeah, follow left wall.
That's super fun.
And so it's kind of the same thing here. Like sometimes really simple solutions are better because it allows players to attribute meaning and context to things, whereas if you create a really complex system, that will frequently be lost, and all that neat stuff that you've done will just be thought as pure randomness. Long tangent, but I thought that would be an interesting development story to share with you guys.
That's funny. I played Fear.
Yeah.
And I played almost all the way through the game, like 3/4 of the way through the game, without knowing that you could slow down time. And I got to this room where there are these two mechs, like big mechs, and I just couldn't beat them.
That's like the core of that game, guy.
And I was like, how do you beat this? And I went online, and of course everybody knows about it, so nobody was posting about it. And then I was just like slamming my hands in the keyboard, and then like slow time happened, and it was like, oh, and then like game was so easy after that. 'Cause it's like,
yeah, I mean, if you got that
all
far,
the challenge is gone.
If you got that far without using it, then yeah, geez. So Malkovith was asking if the area of your town is still set by the standard.
I believe it is.
I mean, your starting point is, but
I think he's talking about like where things spawn on the outside.
Oh.
And this is something that always confuses me. I know the banner is the center, or is really important. I think it's the center. But then like, why the weird blob of thing that you don't see the blob, but why that exists and what determines it, I don't know.
As far as I understand it, and I'm speaking to a system I didn't implement, it relates to explored area. So when you plop the standard, it automatically explores an area around you, and then there's Fog of War. Once your Hearthlings have gone off into that space, it's explored, so the Fog of War is permanently gone. And then things...
But monsters can still spawn in an area that you have vision of.
Is that true? In my experience, I get a lot of value of exploring an area, and then monsters don't seem to spawn there. They spawn immediately. Okay. Yeah.
It's a little confusing. Ask a programmer when they're on here.
Sorry, I can't give a more direct answer to that. Again, I wasn't around for that particular implementation. Don't Call Me Shirley was asking about map expansion and exploring, which is basically like, what am I doing in my prototypes? Well, so the best explanation I can give there is that I have a theory right now, which is that if we can make the world as a whole more dynamic around the player, then it will be more interesting for the long term of the experience. So games historically in the past have accomplished this by doing like world-changing events. Terraria, as an example, like a meteor hits and now there's new resources and monsters. Similarly, when you go to hard mode, like new biomes suddenly pop up. And we're doing it a little bit right now with like goblin attacks and other things, but I actually think there's an opportunity to change the terrain in a more fundamental way. And what that means, I'm not sure. I mean, that could range anything from the ability to do like nomadic exploration and settle new towns to like giant moles that go around and like churn up the terrain and like change it. Or like when a titan, yeah, or like when a titan pops up, like it fundamentally changes all the like copper in the world to corrupted copper. Who really knows at this point? I'm really in the process of just trying to identify the problem first, and now that I've done that, I'm trying to move into like where are some cool solutions in this space. So definitely nothing I want to promise to you guys is this is what we are doing, because I don't even know if this will feel good by the end of it. But yeah, I think there is something potentially really awesome around the idea of adding more of a sense of exploration and expansion into the experience of a city builder, a community builder.
Spafio.
What role will the
Northern Alliance?
Northern Alliance.
Play versus Ascendancy and Riot's Children. What's the difference? So, before Richard talks about what he wants to do, there is a difference besides the biomes. First off, the biomes are a separate choice. So just within the races, I think Ascendancy is more willful. I know Riot's Children is more smart. They have +1 to their their mind.
I changed the stats so that Ascendancy can never have a 1 will, and Rise Children can never have
+1 at the end.
No, it's not. But it works out kind of the same in the math. Rise Children can never have more than less than 2 mind, and then Northern Alliance, by the same token, would never have less than 2 body by that. Also, the tech trees of Rise Children and the Ascendancy are different right now, so
you start with the Carpenter with Ascendancy, and you start with the Potter for Rise Children.
It is a what we want to do with it longer term, though, I think is an interesting question, because I think we need to, before we even start thinking about the Northern Alliance, we need to better define what the differences in gameplay between Rise Children and the Ascendancy are as well. Yeah, we have some stylistic things and a few class changes, but a lot of the gameplay right now is coming more from the biome, I would argue, than it is from the difference in civilization. And I think there's an opportunity on the table if we want to continue to pursue the kingdom separation from the biome separation, that we should push that like much harder. Amiga Cookie is asking about early access Windows, and since Windows user becoming a larger proportion, is there really likely other ports will ever happen? That's probably a better question for Stephanie as opposed to I, but to my understanding, like no one has said like let's not, like we're not doing a port. Like it's still in the plan. I think the challenge that we have as developers is that, and and having gone through this process of taking League of Legends and getting Mac support for it, is that as soon as you add support for another platform, all development slows down by quite a bit. Because now you are, when you do a compile and your auto test, not only do you need to run it on your Windows machine, but you then need to run it on your Mac laptop that's next to you at the same time to confirm that like everything's working on it as well, and then you can start checking stuff in.
Plus, it takes time to do the port. So like, say we wanted to do it right now, we would then lose whoever would go do that port. So we are slower in new content because we've lost that resource.
So right now with the team going through a process of really understanding what we want Stonehearth to be and creating a really solid vision for the future of the game, we've decided that it's the best use of our time is focusing on answering that question so we can get the framework and the technology that we need in place. And then once we have that technology, we have a lot of the gameplay that's represented, but we're missing out on the content. Then I think that is the appropriate time to really start looking at doing the port as well, because we won't run into an issue where like you're trying to iterate and figure out what looks good inside of the game, and you create this new bit of like shading tech, and then you find out that it looks it's like really difficult to implement on the Mac, and so that slows down your ability to even answer the question of if the shading is a good thing in the first place, so forth. So yeah, it's still in the plan, but it probably will be one of those things that I would expect to come closer to the point where we leave early access than in the near term.
How the subsystem? I'm not sure what that's asking.
What do I feel about the current resource amount to build structures? I don't like it. Lumor, it is not balanced, and I think it is weirdly punitive. As an example, my math could be wrong, but I think it is actually more resource intensive to build a 2-story house than it is to build 2 1-story houses of the same volume. And one could argue that makes sense because of structural supports and other things, but that feels kind of bad, in part because of how difficult it is right now to make multi-story houses compared to single-story houses. And there's also some weirdness where I think the cost value scales fairly linearly with the area of a home, when I think it should actually scale more closely with the circumference of a home. And that starts to become a challenge because, to clarify the difference of that, so if you have a house that is I'm trying to think of a math formula in my head. What that implies is that taking a house that is a 10 by 10 home and then expanding it out to like a 12 by 12, because it relates to the area, that's actually a pretty large change in the area of the house, so the cost goes up by quite a bit. Whereas if it were based more on the circumference, that would be not as much of an increase in the two. I think that's how the math works. I'm not sure, I haven't investigated it, but that's how it feels to me as a player. Regardless of whether that is how the system works underneath the hood or not, the fact that it doesn't feel good does mean that we need to go back and review it as a whole. I think we're not properly balancing resource costs at all for construction compared to other things inside of the game.
Children.
Don't call me Shirley. Children. So, children are an interesting thing because in a game with combat, there is a risk that your children will die, and because we are not only publishing in North America,
Even in North America.
Even in North America. Well, North America is like a cultural thing as opposed to like a legal thing.
Yeah.
But there are some decency laws, I believe, in certain regions of the EU that we currently service that don't really strongly allow like injuries to children or death of children is
just kind of
entertainment
feels
thing.
bad.
Yeah,
It's not great.
Yeah, even if the law wasn't there, and it may not be because I'm quoting this like extemporaneously. I don't know if like the death of children is something we really want inside of Stonehearth. Actually, I can pretty much say it's not. So I will say that when we get to the idea of a social system, I am interested in the idea of establishing familial relationships with people so that you could have someone actually be the son or the daughter of someone else inside of the town, and that's part of like the standard expedition or someone when they arrive. But I'm not as much of the fan of actually going through like to Hearthling shack up and then one of them gets pregnant and then childbirth, rearing, etc., etc. That doesn't sound appealing.
Danjo is saying make them invulnerable. Like even that has tons of problems. Like what if everyone in town dies and then your children are left running around and then they're starving? Like it has lots of problems. So I agree with Richard. Like let's avoid the problem. I think you could say, oh well, these two Earthlings have a kid. They just pop into existence as an adult. Like that's something that
I probably wouldn't even go that far. I
probably wouldn't even do that.
No, I wouldn't add. I wouldn't consider adding childbirth as a way to increase your population size.
Okay.
It would be more like RimWorld system where people arrive and
they are the brother or sister
and have
of
familiar
someone.
relationships with people already.
Yeah.
Breaking apart structures from Turtle Swish. Yes, we need it. Absolutely need it. Want to do it. And Chris Klochek is working on some reworks to our construction engine so that we can better support partial destruction of things, or even at all support partial destruction.
He's not currently working on the breaking of structures, but he's working on if a structure was broken, can a Hearthling repair it? Which is a strange problem. But like say you were able to just like punch a hole in a wall. Say you could do that now. We have no ability for the Earthlings to rebuild that wall or to build anywhere near it. Like that wall is now this huge gaping problem that we can't fix. So currently Chris is working on making it so Earthlings can see that and be like, okay, you just need some bricks here and we'll fix it and we're done. Yeah. And then once we have that, then we can start like, how do we punch a hole in a wall? That kind of stuff.
Yep. So Sarandis is asking, in line with class discussions, do we have plans to further define the differences and advantages and disadvantages of herbalist versus cleric? Yeah, I want to do a review of all of the classes in the game and kind of change the skill trees and what the purpose of leveling up particular classes are, but specifically talking about herbalist versus cleric. The way that I think that differentiation will start to manifest, and the way it's starting to manifest in the game right now, is that I see herbalists as dealing more with the concept of long-term care and preventative measures, and clerics dealing more with the immediate reactionary things. So clerics would be the dudes that you want to take with you into combat so they could heal you and like dispel evil spells and those sorts of things. And herbalists you want in the town because they're the best suited to dealing with people who are incapacitated, dealing with people who are sick or affected with a plague or those systems if we end up going in that. And right now
also tie into like farming and plant related things maybe?
Yeah, I'd probably put more of that in the farmer class than in the herbalist, but I mean they're kind of related in some way, right? And right now, incapacitation, if you're incapacitated, it's actually the herbalists who tend to treat Hearthlings as opposed to clerics, and they're the ones that provide medicine and bandages to speed up the rate that people recover from being incapacitated. That's an example of the direction that I think we would go, and with further tuning, I'd want to pursue even more. Is the next update around the corner? Around the corner is always a difficult question to answer, but we are making good progress on the conversation feature right now. We're finishing up our second sprint.
Since what?
Today is the end of our second sprint, right? For the milestone?
For this milestone, yeah.
Yeah. So based on that, I'd say we're probably about halfway through.
I thought we were doing 3.
Well, but in terms
Three
of just,
or 4.
But I'm not even talking about like the milestone. I'm talking about like how much work is remaining on the conversation system.
I'm not sure. I haven't really been working with Linda. Linda like asks me when there's a problem, and I will ask her when there's a problem. But Linda is still working, and as with Justin, they're working, and I am working on animations. I can say I'm a little bit past halfway on animations.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've learned from my time on League of Legends to never give explicit dates.
Yeah.
I would not describe it as around the corner, but I would describe us as on target for what we think it should be.
Yeah. So, Raid Renation, sorry if I mispronounced that. Couldn't the construction cost be based on slabs, e.g. 1 log can create 5 wooden slabs? I believe that's true already. I believe 1 log is 5 slabs, or sorry, 12 slabs, something like that.
I'm not sure, but that's...
but that is something we have now. It's just not balanced.
Yeah. Roadmap, Maddie was asking about multiplayer. So multiplayer is one of the 3 major opportunities that we think exist inside the space from a gameplay perspective. So we have always architected our underlying engine so that there's a strong client-server model, so that when we decide to start actively prototyping multiplayer, there's not like a huge amount of underlying tech that we need to resolve for that. It's all more a question of what are the gameplay concerns, what are the UX concerns around it. And so at the moment, what we're trying to do as a team is determine how multiplayer would function and in what shape it should take, and when we should prioritize exploring multiplayer versus other things. Currently, the thought process is that we should get the core game into a better place where there's a stronger loop through the entire experience and a through line for the player narrative. And then once we have that established, then that's probably a good time to do multiplayer prototypes and explorations as well. But yeah, at the current moment, I wouldn't expect multiplayer to pop up like in the next patch or anything like that, but it is still something that we are actively talking about, and I spent probably about a month or so already just thinking through how multiplayer could work inside of a community builder, because there aren't really great examples inside of the space of success on this front. So it is something we're actually thinking about and spending design time on, but we're still very much in the paper design page as opposed to implementation.
If you have specific ideas on what you would like to see in multiplayer, a lot of people have been posting in YouTube or in the discourse because of the most recent Desktop Tuesdays. So please go to one of those 2 places and give us your feedback, and we would read through them and enjoy them.
So join Lumar. We're catching up a bit with chat. I think we can get through some of these pretty quickly, though. When new seller joins your town, I'd love to preview their stats. Yes, I want it. Give it to me. Please. Please. I want it.
I can't give it to you.
Okay. But yes, absolutely agree. I even want to go further than that. So I'd love to add more. I'd love to replace the daily update and how that gets Hearthlings into your town with something that's more flavorful. Yeah, so as an example, I would love to see something like related to the interactive fiction. Your scouts report that that they met a Hearthling named Joe Bob, who describes himself as the strongest man from his previous village, but he's being chased by goblins because they're so envious of his mighty pythons. Do you want to let Joe Bob into your town. If you do, then the goblins will attack you. And you're like, okay, cool. I will. Let's let him in. And then you let him in, and you see that Joe Bob has the body stat of 1 and the trait of a compulsive liar. And now you're being attacked by goblins as well.
That's terrible.
It's probably not something we would do, but I do think that sort of thing is really cute. But more generally, yes. Even outside of the cutesy example like that, I would love an idea for you to be able to preview the stats of a Hearthling before they join your town and then decide if you actually want them or not. The new office, Don't Call Me Charlie, is amazing. It is super good.
There are weird little problems, like I'm sorry that my head is a glaring beam of white. We can't turn off the lights, and we have extra lights that are supposed to like very softly light our skin, specifically for streaming. But since we can't turn that off, it makes it even worse. So yeah, we're getting things figured out. It's just gonna take a little bit.
Hyrule Symbol, any thoughts on the engineer? Are you happy with how they are? No, I'm not happy. Yes, let's make it better. We need to, I think...
It's like you were saying, we want to readdress every class.
We want to readdress every class, and I think combat as a whole probably deserves looking at as well. I'd expect engineer will probably get a look at about the same time that we start really thinking through the idea of terrain destruction and working that into the gameplay. So like you can have enemy goblins or orcs or cyclopses,
like sappers.
Yeah, like sap your walls so they can get in, and then the engineers in turn, that probably means now we've got explosives in the game so they can play around with those as well.
Goblins plus explosives sounds like fun.
Yeah, I know, it's always a great idea. Always good for everyone involved. Any plans to have ways to increase Hearthling stats? Yeah, I think specifically equipment is a great vehicle for that. I'm a little less inclined to do it from leveling up because that starts to create some weird incentives around wanting to level a Hearthling in every class that exists inside of the game. But there might be a middle ground as well that works for that. But yeah, I'm super into the idea of gear changing people's stats. King or Queen class? So, Don't Crumble Shirley, any thoughts on having something like King or Queen class? Well, I'm not interested in King or Queen, but I do think that there is a potentially interesting space to explore with an idea of, let's call them like noble Hearthlings or like heroic Hearthlings or something else. Basically a small class of Hearthlings that are more difficult to attract to your town, that and more difficult to keep happy. But if you have them, there are a small subset of classes that only they can be. So if you imagine that you have if you have one of these noble Hearthlings, only a noble Hearthling could be like an oracle class or a hero class or like a frost mage or something else. So like they're just like super good, super specific. You probably have a very limited number and it's very difficult to keep them there. But they open up like new gameplay options for you as a result of that. That's where my head goes when I start thinking about that sort of stuff, as opposed to explicit like nobility and hierarchical roles inside of the town. Nikolai, will the map sizes increase anytime soon, or just through an update? This is directly related to the prototypes I'm doing right now about exploration, so it's difficult to answer this, but my headspace is around this question right now.
Juicy lore secrets?
Juicy.
I do not. Do you have juicy lore secrets?
Any that I want to spill.
You could allude to. Instead of spilling. I got
nothing.
One.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So this isn't really lore, and I'm not going to get into too much of my personal stuff, but I've had 2 cats die, not the most pleasant of ways, and they were both lovely animals, and that's while I've been working here. So at some point, got permission from Stephanie, but I'm not sure what I want to do yet. where I'm going to add the cats into the game as some sort of like ghost creatures or like good tidings spirits. So yeah, at some point you will see that, but it's probably going to be a ways still. But that's a juicy little thing that not many people will see. We're going to make sure it's a very low encounter chance, but when you do, it's going to be like, oh, that's sweet.
Let's see. Mokun, any fun things happening if you level Hearthling to max in all classes?
Oh god, that'd take forever.
No, I don't want to do anything there, like, because I think as soon as we put any sort of reward around that concept, people are going to do it, and it's not going to be fun.
Yeah, so after you level up completely in one class, sorry, every level you get in one class makes it harder to get levels in every other class, right?
Oh, does it?
Yeah, so if you do it twice, the third one would take forever. The fourth one would take even more. Like,
oh, man.
I don't think it's possible to do.
I mean, it is probably possible. I doubt there's a gap.
It would be crazy.
But yeah, so I definitely don't like that system, and so that will need to be looked at when we do class stuff. But in general, we want to be careful about incentivizing that kind of thing because players will opt into things that give them any incremental benefit regardless of how boring it is to do. So yeah, I wouldn't put an achievement there or any sort of reward or anything else. Let's see. Lieutenant Campbell, when can we expect Cthulhu to make landfall and start squidding up the place?
Squidding up the place.
One, I think that is an awesome verb, and I will use that in reference to Cthulhu at all points. Two, that will probably become a question to answer at the tail end as I start doing my prototypes, because my prototypes, as I mentioned, are trying to create a through line for the experience, which means having a better understanding of what the beginning, middle, and the end of the game are. And then once we've got that through line, we can then start really discussing, okay, so this is what we want the end game to look like. So then what's appropriate there? How do you access it? And how should it be in the experience? Like, should a Titan be a thing that you actively summon and fight? Should it be something that is on an apocalypse timer, so it's your Majora's Mask, last day on Earth kind of thing? Is it something that is you do some things to unlock the ability to then found a town specifically to fight the Titan? Like, there's a lot of different ways that could go, and those differ heavily based on what the game as a whole is.
Stephanie actually just addressed this in the roadmap part 2, I believe. Basically saying, even before we hired Richard, we were like planning on doing Titans at some point. That's been for a while. But we were thinking right before we hired Richard, like, what would we do? And like, we were coming up with ideas for Titans, and they were basically these mini games that, like, each Titan would be a different minigame that has nothing to do with the rest of the game, and it feels very tacked on and bad. So what we're doing, like, since hiring Richard and forward, is like, let's make the game fun overall and figure out what the game means, and then in the end, when we have Titans, or like throughout when we have Titans, we can like make sense of it and have a fun experience that is pervasive as opposed to this tacked on thing.
Yep. Have we come to a conclusion on if you'd be adding textures to slabs blocks such as grass?
Nope, not yet.
We are exploring stuff, but I don't think there's any conclusion yet. The real question is what kind of like level of detail we want as a whole, right? Yeah. As I understand it. Solidus, any thoughts on passive skills, ones developed by idle time, that would be slightly influenced? No thoughts? I don't have any thoughts.
That's a cute idea.
It's a cute idea. Yeah. This makes sense if we ever want to create something that looks like a skill point, like a skill display with bars and numbers and other things. I would be inclined not to pursue that and instead meet halfway here by some people having a trait which is like fishermen, and so then they get an idle action which is occasionally go catch fish, and then other cases getting some of the things like leadership being like a skill that you could acquire when you level up in a certain class, as a very explicit like action XCOM style. Yeah, I kind of want to avoid skill bars though. That doesn't sound like it fits inside of Stonehearth.
Bring up a question concerning dual classes.
Let's see. So Surrenderous is asking about warrior against all classes for Hearthling. What are your thoughts on cross-discipline or having some kinds of benefits only unlockable to different classes? So this is a difficult question for me to answer without having gone through the process of really thinking through what classes as a whole mean in the game and what leveling up a class means. What I can say is that I like exploring this idea because like one of the systems I really like is how the class system works in Final Fantasy XIV as an example, where when you level up a certain class there are certain skills that you can then use regardless of what class you are. But again, Final Fantasy XIV is a game that's encouraging you to invest a lot of time in learning all of these classes because they want you to spend that huge amount of time because they get paid monthly by your time in the game. Stonehearth doesn't have that motivation, so I don't know if it is as applicable here. I like the idea objectively, but in context I'm less of a fan of it, I suppose is the way I might say it. Where are the two founders? Tony and Tom. They are here. They are around. Tony is doing engineering stuff and pops in from time to time to help us on Stonehearth and solve some crazy problems. Tom is actually one of the major stakeholders for the team. So in terms of us defining what our like gameplay direction is, how big we can make the team, who we should be hiring, Tom is the person we go to for all of that. As the studio's grown, he's being involved in a lot of things now, so he's not as much a guy that will go in and check in like changes into our GitHub repository, but he's still actively involved in direction setting and product leadership for Stonehearth as a whole.
I'm smiling over here. Don't call me Shirley's question. What would you say to having a training dummy for soldiers to train or for quick buffs?
Yeah, that sounds cool.
That's something that people keep asking for. I asked for it before I got this job. I was like, where's the training dummy? I need my soldiers to level up.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. We should do that. Like, it's probably trivial to do-ish.
I don't remember why, but
there's action and we need a...
I think some of the programmers don't want it, and I don't remember why, but I definitely want it.
Yeah, we should have a way for combat classes to gain experience outside of combat. I might restrict it to something like a training dummy might only be able to get you up to like level 2 or something, and then you have to do combat to get beyond that, but that seems like a good idea.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'll bring it up.
More dynamic worlds. Yes, that is, Nikolai, that is exactly what I am prototyping. Lumor, will there be an option to turn outcast Hearthling if you don't like them? Or there's some sort of backstabbing, like tipped off goblins of how weakness have. Should you be able to exile and or kill Hearthlings in your town if you don't like them? It's kind of dark. So
technically you can right now.
It's pretty difficult.
No, you just make him a combat class and then you send him out to fight someone and you don't give him support.
Yeah.
But it takes a while.
Yeah. That's...
Or you just make them a farmer. Or a person that
yeah, but if you don't
stuff.
like them, you're still not going to like them if they're a farmer.
It's true.
Alright. Lumor, I actually don't have a good answer for you. I recognize the desire as a player to want to do that. In fact, there'd be times, especially for me, that I'd really want to do that. But creating a nice thematic way of doing it inside of the world where we're trying to create like more like happiness feelings is tough. There are ways to do that. Like Animal Crossing shows that pretty well. You can just evict a a dude in your town and they're sad, but then they leave and you get a new dude and everyone's happy. So there are ways to do it.
Well, if you had that like one body compulsive liar guy, like I don't think you'd want to keep him around.
Oh, but he has so much character to the town.
Yeah.
And that's part of the thing, right? Like sometimes having troublemakers in your town helps build opportunities for stories. So if everyone is perfect all the time, that's a pretty boring city.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm torn. I think the challenge there is more thematic than it is implementation, but worth thinking about. It's not high on my priority list to answer yet, but when we start getting more into how Hearthlings join your town, it probably will start coming up as a question. Will you show us some town the people working on the game did? Be awesome to see ideas.
See what?
Bibbin was asking for towns.
Oh.
To be honest, we could show you some of the towns that we've made, but frankly, the towns that are on Discourse are so much better.
So much better
than the stuff that we make.
I can't remember any of the names right now. We took not this most recent PAX, but the PAX before that. We brought someone with us who's amazing. I'm sorry, I can't remember the names of the people that make amazing towns, but there are lots on the Discourse.
Yeah,
you can see.
Caranthus? Caranthus? I'm bad with names.
That's close. That's not quite it.
That's not quite it. But yes, I would encourage you to look at the saves that are in Discourse because they will be so much better than anything that we make here. How far along is the new building system? Chris is actively working on that right now. It's a little bit difficult for me to give an exact answer here because he's off in Toronto doing really smart things.
Also, you guys should not notice the difference when it's done. Like, it will go in and the old code will still be there, so all the old things will still work, and then all the new code will be connected to the UI as it is now. Like, you should not notice a difference. But that gives us a base to start working on the future. So
yeah, as far as I know, he's actually making really good progress on the tech side, and might be in a place where we can start actually discussing new UX, the new player experience for building within not too long a time. Hopefully, that's going to be creating the UI and the actual acts of building structures, though that's going to be a really tough task, and that will take probably at least 1 to 2 months just in of itself to get that really solid, because building in 3D is hard, and as you saw from Maya, even in our beginning of the stream, it's not a solved problem even in our industry, so making it fun at the same time is a challenging thing. So Fabulousness was asking if worlds would be connected. That is one of the things that I actually pitched for a through line on the game. Like maybe you're founding multiple cities and those cities exist on the same world, and then you can do trade routes between your current city and old cities that you've played. I'm interested in that. I don't know if that's what the final shape will be, but I do like the idea of your town interacting with things outside of the borders of your map. And we just need to figure out what the borders of your map are and what does that mean.
Don't Call Me Shirley asking about able to have soldiers stand guard. So you can already do that with the defend action. It doesn't work perfectly, but it does, like, you can put them at a gate or a door and they will stand there. They will go off and eat when they're hungry, and if somebody comes in to fight them, like a goblin, they will protect themselves in the area. So you can do that now.
Yep, I would, speaking personally, I would love to get a system that looks a little bit more like the patrol routes in Prison Architect inside of the game, and that would create some better control of who goes where and what and does what. Right now the patrol routes are automated, are they not?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would like to control that as well.
Yeah. So it's not in the game yet, but when we...
There's a mod for that.
There's a mod for that?
Somebody made a mod
awesome.
for you place little banners and then you can have your guys walk
Awesome.
between them.
But yeah, I'd love to have more control over where guards are and what they're doing. And finally, Hyrule Symbol. Would new Fitmen have conversation with Master Fitmen gain a little experience? We are actually putting out a trait in this upcoming patch called Professor, which basically does exactly that. If the professor is, if someone with a professor trait talks to someone who is of a class that the professor has a level in, the person on the other side of the conversation will get experience in their class.
Is that the upcoming stable or unstable?
That should be the upcoming stable. It's on. It's in our. Currently it is prioritized for this upcoming alpha.
Cool.
So with that though, we are at 10.
Yeah.
So
half hour past we were supposed to.
Yeah. Oh, I thought it was I thought it was an hour and a half stream.
Nope.
Oh.
But it's fine. We gave them some extra stuff.
Cool. All right. Well, guys, thank you for participating. Today ended up being more of a question, answer, and discussion session than any reveal of what we are actively working on. But I hope you guys enjoyed chatting with us. Appreciate your contribution and your feedback as always. If you want to continue the conversation, please go to discourse.stonehearth.net and post your ideas, feedback, thoughts, random art there. We will more than happily look at it and comment. All of the devs on our team regularly check that discourse. And we have a very active community. So please continue to talk with us. You guys have some great ideas, and I definitely want to steal as many of them as I can because, yeah, you guys are awesome. Well, have a great day for those of you that's in the morning. Have a great night for those of you across the pond, and look forward to talking to you guys again.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you guys for coming.
Bye.
Hit mute. Right there.